Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, Reeling in Holistic Health, where we care about your mental health and well-being. I'm your host, Coach Rice, and I want to make sure that you tune in every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where I have my special guest on to talk about real issues that matter most. I want you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook Live, on Business Facebook page, also on the Be Awesome Network. Stay tuned. I think you're going to really like this next guest. Happy Monday and welcome to Casting the Net, where we care about your mental health and well-being. I am your host, Coach Rice, and with me today I have a special guest, and we have a very amazing, interesting topic that we want to talk about today. His name is Kam Knight. Kam, tell us, where you're from and how did you embark upon being a mentor and author?
All right. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And as you mentioned, my name is Kam Knight, and I'm an author of a dozen books in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance, many of the ones you see behind me. And my journey really started when I first moved to the US. And there were two main things that kind of influenced the trajectory of what we're going to talk about. The first is I had parents who had high expectations and very low support. And two, because there was low support, they weren't really around. They were physically there, but not supportive wise. And so coming to the US, it was a complete culture shock. Like the part of the world that I come from is so vastly different that it was a complete shock to my whole system. And I had no idea what was going on. And the way to figure out what was going on and how the world worked, I turned to television. And unfortunately, I grew up on television, and the conclusion that my mind made was that it was all about the external. That to have any sort of self worth or respect, I would need to have a big house, nice car, a large amount in my bank account, as well as a prestigious job. So combined with the high expectations and this thinking, I was a fairly driven individual and I wanted to have a lot more success than I ended up having. So in high school, I worked hard to get into an Ivy League school. I didn't get into an Ivy League school and I worked hard in school to get into a Big Five accounting firm. I didn't get into a Big Five accounting firm. And although I got into a decent college as well as I got a job, my life was missing the mark all the time. And it wasn't just in big endeavors like this, but even minor ones like exercising, getting fit, developing a skill, studying, things of that nature. And I always wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation, desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it. And at the time, there really was no good answers. The best answers that was being thrown around was that you needed to have good beliefs or motivation and discipline. And although these things are a part of the puzzle, I think they're just a piece of the bigger puzzle. And that question lingered in my mind for the last 15 to 20 years. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I just do this thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexity of the human brain. And over time, I began to realize that, hey, wait a minute, there's a part of our mind built to hold us back. There's a part of our brain designed to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it's a brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it.
So let's talk about internal resistance. Can you
Yeah.
define for the audience, can you define what that is?
Yeah. So, at the most basic level in resistance is a part of the brain that is holding us back from doing something, irregardless of how much we want to do it, how simple it is, or how much benefit we can derive. And the way this works out is that there's a part of our brain that creates wants, and it's creating wants and desires one after another. And what's really important to understand is that this part of the brain isn't built to see if the want is achievable, fulfilling, or even safe. Its only job is to create wants, and in many ways, it's kind of it's cranking out wants one after another. And the way, in many ways, it works is that it is stimulated, it's triggered by various stimuli. So if it sees a new pair of shoes, it wants it. A nice car drives by and it wants that as well. Someone attractive we see and it creates a want for that as well. So it's just constantly creating wants without any care for whether that want is achievable, if it's safe, or if it's something that will actually be fulfilling. And then we have another part of the brain that looks at that want to see if we should do it. And this is the part that does the analyzing. And anytime we have a want or desire, it filters that want through a whole host of criteria. And so what's really important to understand is it's possible for the brain to both create a desire for something and hold us back from it. And so if a lot of people, I'm sure here listening, have experienced moments where like they want to do this thing, but they can't, or they want to do this other thing and they feel like they're being stopped and there's this tug of war going inside. Well, in a way, there really is because the wants and resistance work separate. And the part of the brain, like I said, that holds us back, if it doesn't give us a green light, we can't do it. And what's even more important to know is both parts can get in the way. So we might think it's just resistance that holds us back, but our own wants can hold us back because our wanting mechanism can create so many wants, it pulls us in all sorts of directions, and it's difficult to move in any one. So as soon as we start on one thing, our wanting mechanism could create a want for something else. As soon as we jump to the something else, it creates a want for something different. And it's possible for a person to go from one want to another without making any progress and then wondering, well, what's going on?
Right. So it sounds like it's best to focus on one thing when it comes to the wants. Focus on one thing and achieve that before you move to the next. But then when it comes to the resistance part, what do you think is the root cause of that resistance? Because something is happening in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So great comment and great question. And when I say great comment, it's very true that it's important for us to narrow in on a few wants to work on. Because right now we're living in a culture and society where there are so many options and our options have options. And it's really easy to get lost in all the options, especially considering our wants are created simply by seeing or hearing something, meaning we don't necessarily choose it, it gets triggered. And because we're living in a world with so many things to do, so many things to have, and so many experiences to enjoy, it's being stimulated all the time. And we just don't have the time to work on, achieve, or go after everything. So we're living at a time where it's become more important to say no to more things and yes to just a few things that we can put our time in for a sustainable period or for an extended time. And when it comes to resistance, as I mentioned, anytime an option or a course of action stands before us, meaning anytime there's a desire, it gets analyzed by resistance using a whole host of criteria. And there are many criteria that resistance goes through. Some of the more common ones include things like beliefs, habits, as well as comfort zones. So if we try to do something that goes against our beliefs, meaning if we don't believe something is possible, of course, resistance is going to keep us from doing it. And what's more is we could think something is possible, but if we don't think it's possible for us, resistance will stop us again. And then habits play into the equation as well. For anything to become comfortable and easy requires habits. And if we haven't built a habit for a task or behavior, it's actually quite awkward and annoying and even painful to do. And our brain is designed to prevent pain. And it doesn't reason or use logic to see if a pain is healthy or helpful, like healing pain or growing pain. It's a simple on off switch as well, where if there is pain or potential for it, block it. So when we're doing something that causes pain, like something we haven't done before, the immediate response of resistance is to prevent us from doing it, even though it could be healthy and beneficial in the long run. And so these are just a couple criterias, but they kind of go really deep. They also relate to our identity. So if we try to do something that's not in line with our identity, resistance will show up. It also goes into our self-image. If we've created a self-image for ourselves and doing something might threaten or damage that self-image, resistance will show up as well. But it goes even deeper. It can go to things like imposter syndrome as well as authority issues. And authority issues is interesting because I think it runs a lot of people's lives where if growing up a person was always told what to do and how to do it and what not to do and what not to do and how not to do it, at a certain point their brain gets fed up and doesn't want to listen to what anyone says or doesn't want to do anything they have been ever told. And so what's interesting is even when they grow up and want to do those things, they can't because the authority issue response kicks in. And we see this pattern a lot where people still eat junk food or binge on television thinking they enjoy junk food and television. But the reality is they're resisting some authority that told them not to do that when they were young. And so these things kind of go really deep. They can actually even go into our core needs. The core needs is something that doesn't get talked about, but I think like authority issues, many people are affected by it in terms of it stopping them. So as humans, we are built to have certain needs, such as the need for attention, affection, love, and physical contact. And some of these needs are deeply ingrained into us, like the need for a mother's love or a father's guidance. They're so deeply ingrained that when these needs aren't met, it's painful, extremely painful. The kind of pain that can make a person go crazy. That's how deeply ingrained some of these needs
Yes.
that we are born with, right? Now, if a person grows up and these needs aren't met, and the brain learns that these needs can't be met, won't be met, or is too dangerous to be met, the brain will prevent us from going after those needs. Makes sense, right?
Yes.
But because these are such core needs, the need doesn't go away. It just gets louder and stronger and more painful. And since the brain believes the need can't be met, it feels it has no other choice but to distract us from the pain. And there's many ways it'll distract us, such as social media, television, video games, even drugs and alcohol. But
Yes.
another way it'll distract us is to keep us procrastinating and sabotaging. So our life is always difficult and challenging. So our focus is always on problems and not on the pain. And I have a really quick story to share about this to just drive the point home. I knew somebody who wanted the love of his dad, but his dad never gave it to him, and it hurt him. It hurt him a lot. So much so that he lived a hectic lifestyle, living from paycheck to paycheck, never being able to make ends meet. And his brain orchestrated that because if he could finish what he started, his life would be good. And if his life was good, he would have this pain of his dad's love not being met at the forefront of his awareness. But because his brain felt like that need could never be met, it felt the only way to distract him was to create problems, meaning keeping him from doing anything, keeping him from finishing anything he started. So his focus was always on problems and not the pain. And so, like I said, this topic goes pretty deep because a lot of people,
It does.
yeah, who are struggling and have challenges with procrastination and sabotage, it's not because they don't have what it takes, they're not smart, or they don't have discipline, but there's all sorts of things like this stuff going on. And what's more, some people, they're living a challenging life because they have this deep-seated need that a part of their brain feels like it can't be met or it's too dangerous to be met. And that's really the root for some people for why they have resistance or why they can't do things or accomplish things or move forward in life.
I love this topic because, especially now that people are starting to get into the new year and they want to,
Yeah.
that's when they really get started. They want to they want to lose weight or get in shape or get healthy. That's a lot of resistance come with that. What are some of the areas where you have actually experienced this? It's going through resistance, and how did you come out of it?
So, again, great question. And I think this is a fantastic topic for the New Year's because, as you mentioned, a lot of people do have these goals. And we've seen the studies, everybody knows that a lot of our effort starts to fizzle out within the first few weeks. And by the end of the month, it's actually out of mind. And so this kind of goes back to we have the wanting mechanism that creates these wants and desires or goals for the new year, right? And then we may be able to start on it, but again, that desire gets filtered through resistance to see if it's worth doing or if we should continue it. And if that goal is not in line with any of the criterias, as I mentioned, it will prevent action. And some of these criterias do include things like beliefs. Like I said, we might think a goal is possible, but if we have a deep down belief that it's not possible for us, or that we can't do it, or that we're not enough for it, and even more that we don't deserve it, the kind of beliefs that we're not really aware of, it runs really deep and it takes up inner work to access it. That can slow progress. It can make it harder to stick with the goal, or we start to move away, or if we do get close to the goal, our brain starts to sabotage our efforts. And this is why
Yes.
our New Year's efforts start to fizzle very quickly because people start, they have the want, but then they start hitting up against all these resistance. And then we brought up also, you had also brought up authority issues. Again, authority issues is a big thing that's happening for a lot of people, where, as I mentioned, even when we grow up and want to do things like work out and get healthy and not eat junk food or watch television, because that authority issue response got kicked in when we were young, with all our parents telling us we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to do it this way, it still shows up as an adult. And what's really interesting is that our authority issues can last a long time. People can go years and decades resisting an authority, and as a result, not be able to do anything they've ever said or take any advice they've ever given, no matter how long ago they said it. In fact,
Mhm.
we can hold authority issues to our graves. And like I said, what that means is to this day, in this very moment, a person may be resistive to studying because of all the teachers that told them to study. They may be resistive to being on time because someone at some point was always on their case about being timely. They may be resistive to diet and exercise because an overbearing father and mother wanted it so badly for them. Or the opposite can be happening. As I mentioned, we may have been told not to watch so much television or eat so much junk food, and now we binge like it's going out of style. Or we still drink, smoke, and get high to give the big FU to all the people who said it's bad for you.
Right.
And what's really interesting, and I hope this can help people overcome the authority issue part of it, is our authority issues hurt no one else but ourselves. When we resist our parents, it doesn't necessarily affect their health, it affects our health. When we
Right.
don't listen to our teachers, it doesn't necessarily affect their grades, but it affects our grade. And oftentimes, when we are in the authority issue response, we're trying to outsmart the people that told us what to do. A part of the response is, oh, you told me to do this, but I can prove that I can get the same success without having to listen to you. And then we work harder, put in more effort for less results. And although we're trying to outsmart people, we just look like the fools. And what I also want people to be aware of when it comes to the authority issue response is that this response can be pretty automatic. Like a desire comes up and the brain goes, no, I don't want to do this. Another desire comes up, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go here. I don't want to go there. And a lot of people are doing things and making the choices they are, thinking that they want to do those things. But the reality is, it's that they're resisting some authority from their past or in their life. So a lot of the things people are doing, making their lives more difficult, isn't because they're choosing it, it's in resistance to what they had been told. And it can really complicate things for us and create challenges to things that could be healthier and more beneficial in our life. Now, to answer your question, have I experienced it? Well, the I've come across about a good 2 dozen to 2.5 dozen causes of resistance. And the
Hmm.
reason I came across that is it's what I hit up. Like when I was struggling is because I had poor beliefs. I worked on the beliefs. And then it was, well, I just don't even have the habits for it because I was pretty, watched television and didn't do much outside of that. So I just didn't have the muscle to take action on things. So I had to develop the habit. And then as I was making progress, I was moving out of my comfort zone, which is another reason for resistance. And so I worked through that. And then I hit up things against my identity. The things I was doing was not in line with my identity, meaning when I was growing up, I I had an identity more of a kind of a nerd, introverted type of person. And some of the things I was trying to do didn't align with that identity. And so I worked on my identity. And some of these things took me years and decades to uncover. The authority issue, that didn't take me until, over 10, 15 years to come across. And even when I
Mm.
heard about authority issues, it wasn't explained in the way that I'm explaining it now because it took some really deep diving to understand authority issue things. So, to answer your questions, have I come across it? Literally, I went through all of
I
it.
see.
Yeah. And that's how I realized that, oh, wow, the brain goes through these criterias. And what's really important that I really want people to understand is that some people have a little bit of resistance and some people have layers of resistance. And oftentimes we'll see somebody using a tip or technique and get massive results. And then when we try to use that tip, technique, or solution, it doesn't do anything for us or things are still a struggle. And it's easy to assume that the universe is against us or things just don't go our way and things of that nature. But the reason that happens is that that tip and technique likely address that person's resistance. And that tip and technique may not, your resistance might be different. So even though you try it and it doesn't work, it's because the resistance you have is not the same, or two, it did work on that resistance, but there were other layers that are holding you back. And so then we have to work through and go deeper into the other layers. And in some ways, it is unfair or unfortunate because when we see somebody doing something very easily, it can be disheartening that we have to put in that much more effort to get the same results or just get any sort of results. And again, it doesn't come down to the fact that we're not capable as the next person. It's just that we have more resistance going on that we need to work through. And it is a challenge because some of these things aren't obvious. They're not common sense.
Right.
They're not things you can just ask yourself and say, hey, what's holding me back? And your brain goes, well, it's this exact thing. And this is how you get over it. Like it takes a lot of work. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for years and decades to uncover the depths of some of the resistance that can come up within the human mind and body. And it is the unfortunate thing, but I do want people to understand they can't do something, it has nothing to do with the fact that they're lazy or unmotivated. It means that there's probably some resistance going on. And um, it'll really help to either try to hone in on what that is or understand that it could be resistance and try to willpower through it.
And I definitely agree with you. They please do figure out what it is because you can be you can reach so many different goals. You can overcome so many hurdles, and
Yeah.
why not just figure it, find out what it is. So now that we have someone that do the work in that, you do extensive work in it, I see,
Yeah.
because you're going through all the layers like peeling the onion.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome, the work that you're doing in this area.
Thank you.
And tell us about the books you wrote.
Yeah. So before I got into the internal resistance work, I wrote books in the area of mental performance. So if you remember when I introduced myself, I said I'm an author in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance. In the beginning, I was really into the mind aspect of things. So I had books on memory, concentration, mind mapping, and speed reading, because that's what I was really into. And then as I evolved, I came across different resistance in my life. One of them had to do with the physical aspect. So I created a book on diet because there's a lot of misinformation around diet. And and concentration was my 10th book. And that's where the topic of resistance started to actually bloom. There was a chapter in there which I talk about the wanting mechanism as the thing that can pull our focus away. Because we have so many wants, it's difficult to focus on one thing. And that chapter really germinated the idea of internal resistance because from there, I realized, oh, wow, there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. And the wants and the resistance actually work separately. And then I went kind of deeper into it, and then understanding that when resistance stops us, it doesn't tell us it stops us, it actually uses manipulative tricks. So that's another part of the resistance equation that we haven't talked about that might be helpful. So we have a want. The want gets analyzed by resistance using a whole host of criteria. I named some of the criteria, such as beliefs, habits, comfort zones, identity, image, self-image, authority issues, core needs. Now, if after going through the criteria, the brain decides it's not going to let you do that thing, it doesn't tell you that it's not. It doesn't say, hey, Martha, this thing that you're trying to do, it will give too much satisfaction to the authorities in our lives, so I can't let you do it. Or that goal of yours, well, it goes against this core belief that we have that we're not enough, so we're just going to sit here and do nothing. That's not how resistance shows up. It actually shows up in manipulative ways. In fact, what I say is resistance has all sorts of tricks up its sleeve to keep us from doing things. And you wouldn't think of them as tricks, which is why they work so well and why we so easily fall for them. And some of the more obvious tricks go back to things like television, social media, video games, and other distracted behaviors like drinking or alcohol. And I say they're obvious because when we're doing those things, we know we should be doing something else. But these tricks can be very deceptive and sly because have you ever done something that you thought was much more difficult than it really was. And then once you started, you're like, that wasn't so bad. Why didn't I start sooner?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Well, that's a trick of resistance.
am.
Resistance makes something seem so difficult and complicated that just thinking about it makes us exhausted. And because feel exhausted, we don't want to do the thing. And as long as we don't do the thing, the tricks of resistance wins. Yeah.
I like how you named it as a
Yeah.
personality.
I know when I
As
talk,
a, I like how you externalize it because that's how you actually literally can go through the flow of it
yeah.
is externalizing it so you can know that it's separate from you, but it's working against you.
And it literally is separate from you because, like I said, it's a part of the brain
Hmm.
and it does work separate from our wants. And I'm glad you said that because what I tell or try to teach people is that when it comes to resistance, or one of the challenges of being human, is understanding the distinction between the voices of your desire and the voices of your resistance. They're both your voices, but one of them is holding you back, even though it's giving you the illusion that it's pushing you forward. And if a person can become aware of some of the voices in their head and be more critical of it, meaning, is that really the voice of my forward moving self? Or is that the voice of my pulling back self? And if we just assume that the voices in our head are our own voices, we can follow them and not get the results that we want. But if we can be critical, we can be like, oh, this voice is actually trying to hold me back. And do I want to listen to this voice? Or do I want to be a little bit more cautious before I just jump into what it says? I think that's what's going to help a person when it comes to moving through resistance. Though there's other tricks that resistance plays too. So let me ask you, I'm sure you've experienced this, or at least with your client, where you're trying to give a client an advice, and before they can even let you finish, they'll say things like, no, I don't need that, I got this, or have other feelings of being too good.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, that's another trick because as soon as we feel we're too good for the advice, we shut it down. And since we just shut it down, we don't take it. And because we don't take it, we don't get the progress. And because we don't get the progress, the tricks of resistance win again. So there's all these things. And a lot of times that voice or response is very automatic. We don't even realize we're doing it or saying it, but it just comes up so fast and it shuts down the thing that we could do to get forward moving progress. But because we shut it down, we can't move forward. And since we don't move forward, resistance wins again. So there's a lot of tricks at play that resistance uses.
So you do a lot of good work in growth of a business growth, entrepreneurship, all of these things that where resistance play a whole lot of tunes in people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it shows up everywhere. One of the questions I do get is, does everyone have resistance, or do we ever, can we ever fully overcome resistance? And the answer to the first question is yes, we all have resistance to something. Even though we may see somebody who's really successful in business, they may have resistance to doing sports or certain types of sports or partaking in certain types of activities. And their focus is in one area that they have little resistance over, so they can think about doing it and take action and have massive success. And so, or that business person might not have much resistance until they get to a certain level. They get to a certain level in their job or career, and then boom, they hit a wall because a part of their brain is kind of worried about what might happen if they continue growing or what might come about if they continue moving forward
Right.
or they start to question their beliefs about getting to the higher level. And then does the resistance ever go away? No, because there's so many things that we can do. For example, we live in a specific neighborhood and we know our neighbors. But if we were to take a trip and go outside of our neighborhood, the brain is going to create resistance and we're not going to be as comfortable as with people that we don't know and never met before. So in a way, that is resistance. Or we might be a really good cook, but then let's say we decide to take up another hobby, such as, I don't know, crocheting or whatever. And although in one hobby we were great, as we're starting the next, we might not feel like we're as good since we haven't built the muscle for it. The habit's not there, so the progress will be slow. And maybe there are certain stigmas with that hobby that, oh, it's for women or it's for male, and I'm a male trying to do something that is seen as primarily a female activity. So resistance can come up. So resistance doesn't fully always go away, and everyone has it. It's just a matter of understanding why it's coming up and really not falling for the initial impulse of not doing it, but putting in conscious directed thought into why the resistance is there and then using logic to move past an emotional response. I hope that made sense.
That make a lot of sense actually, because anytime I know I find myself when I'm moving forward in business, it gets uncomfortable,
Yes. Yeah.
and I have to fight that resistance
Yeah.
because it gets uncomfortable. Every time I go to the next level in life, it gets uncomfortable
Yeah.
because you have to grow, and that causes you to get uncomfortable. It make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you do other work. What other work do you do when it comes to mental health?
So I developed a technique that helps people go into their unconscious mind where we can do the work at the unconscious level. It sounds like hypnosis or NLP, but it's not that. It's something I've been working on for the last 20 years and helping clients with very recently. And it's had massive, massive results. And that's because, there's a lot of criteria for resistance, and the human brain and body is very complex. And it's not easy to just unearth out what our resistance is. Like I said, it could take a lot of working and going through a lot of layers. And even once we hit on that layer, it's not easy to release that resistance or move past it. And so this technique I developed, it helps more or less disengage the barrier between our conscious and unconscious mind. So to allow my clients to go into their unconscious and see the reason for their resistance, why it's there, how it formed, how the different events in their life from their childhood played out and germinated into the challenge that they're experiencing. But what's more important is not just about gaining awareness, but it's actually releasing a lot of the resistance and the emotional charges, because most everything that's going on for us has an emotional charge. Meaning, when we talk about those limiting beliefs, well, limiting beliefs aren't like a statement in our head. It's like an emotional response. It's a feeling
Yes.
of undeserving. It's a feeling of not enough. And all of our desires filter through those feelings to decide whether we should do something or not. Now, if we can go into the unconscious and release the feelings, um, it doesn't have as much of a hold. And so this is the kind of the work that I do now. It's more one-on-one work, and anyone who is interested in having much quicker breakthroughs and moving forward much quickly, they can email me at mentor@kamknight.com for more information.
Okay, and we'll put that in the video as well.
Before everyone leaves, I do want to say that for those who listen to all the way to the end, I do have 3 gifts for everyone. And the first is called prompt engineering for your mind. The human brain was the original ChatGPT, and we can prompt it just like ChatGPT to give us answers and solutions, but more importantly, take action on those answers and solutions. So that's the first guide. The second guide is called Build Skills and Habits in Your Sleep. When we do work at the unconscious level, it's much easier to create change, and we can actually build skills and habits at the unconscious level, essentially while sitting down or even lying in bed. And that's a second guide. And the third guide is a deeper dive into this topic of internal resistance, where they'll learn other ways our wants can be a challenge. As I mentioned, there's many challenges our wants create, other causes of resistance, and more importantly, they'll learn about other tricks of resistance. And they can get all of that on my website at kamknight.com.
Well, thank you so much, Cam. And to the audience, thank you for listening and have a fantastic Monday.
It's your time to shine. Journey to chart. Coach Rice wisdom will heal every heart. So join us now. Let's make life suffice. Welcome to Mondays with Coach Rice.